everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkiewicz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. Wes, to talk a little OTA action. We were not recording shows last week when the Packers had the first week of OTAs, which included the first practice that we got to witness during this OTA period. I'm just going to throw this out there as an open-ended question. From what you saw at practice or the players we talked to, and we talked to a lot of the big-name players on this team, that first that first big availability of the offseason, what was your biggest takeaway from that day of access last week?
It was a fun day. I think a couple things happened. Obviously, we didn't have the typical first day of the offseason program where we talked to guys. This was our first time really chatting with a lot of these guys since the last locker room session in Green Bay after the last season.
Back in January.
So this answer could be, you can give so many different responses to this, but I think there was a reason why when you and I were divvying up coverage and we were figuring out what to write, the first story you wrote was on the receivers. It was on Jayden Reed. And one, understanding where he's at, because a lot of us forget he did suffer an injury in that game against Philadelphia. I was in the locker room with him afterwards. He had the sling on his shoulder, ends up having a partially torn labrum in addition to a dislocated shoulder. Said he was pretty much down for most of the offseason program in terms of that. There's other things he was able to do, but that did lay him up for a couple months, but he didn't require surgery. He's good to go there. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation outside the building about number one receivers and two receivers and all of this, and now Matthew Golden being added to the mix. But I thought it was really important that Reed talked about how, first and foremost, the culture they have in that room, the culture that seemingly has always been there through the different generations and different players that have come through there, that's still very much in place. And this definitely is an all-for-one mentality of how they're approaching this thing. And then the last thing I'll throw in there, too, before I pass the microphone back to you, Christian Watson, man. You and I walk into the practice inside the Hudson Center, and this guy is not necessarily, running routes and making huge pass catches, but the fact that he was stretching with the team and the fact that he was cleared to attend practice, he was out there during the Packers practice at Nitschke Field. That's not something typically you see a lot of guys coming off ACLs doing. And Matt LaFleur did say afterwards they think he's ahead of schedule. Looks like he definitely put the time in the weight room as well. So the Packers receiving core, if all together, if all healthy, which again could end up being more towards the midpoint of the season, I just think there's so many different intriguing options to it, and the fact is that group very much is still rowing in the same direction. Yeah,
and I think that was a strong takeaway of mine as well, and it's why I wrote about it. For those who didn't catch the story, it is on Packers.com. It was posted last week on Wednesday evening. Because there was a lot of stuff going on in the offseason with regard to the receivers. What Josh Jacobs said at the Super Bowl on Radio Row about needing a number one, and then the Packers end up spending two of their first three draft picks on wide receivers. And then there's the story that gets out that Jayden Reed's agent had contacted the Packers front office to just clarify where he stood. A couple of things on that. For one, nobody's holding anything against Josh Jacobs, and in fact, Jayden Reed took the comments as motivating. And quite frankly, I don't think this is a receiver group that necessarily needs any extra motivation. They know the stats, the drop passes, and all the stuff that happened last year. So they know what's out there. And the fact that the front office invested two of their top three draft picks in wide receivers, it's like, all right, they're bringing in as much talent as they can, and they're going to say, all right, who's going to be here? Who's going to step up to the plate and show up and play and provide the production that they're looking for? And these guys are going to be competing, through these next couple weeks, and then certainly through training camp and everything like that. And Reed did clarify with regard to his agent. He had hired a new agent. The contact with the Packers front office, he clarified that was really just a matter of course in terms of his, signing up with a new agent. But the word got out as far as what happened. It was in the context of the two new wide receivers in the draft. As far as Reed's concerned, that whole report was a misinterpretation of what was going on. So just to clear all that up. But I like what you said about the culture, the rowing in the right direction. These guys, the biggest thing that Jayden Reed, what he wanted to focus on with all the media questions that were coming his way, is that he had multiple exit interviews with his coaches in January after the playoff loss to Philadelphia, and he was delivered a very clear message from multiple coaches. we want you to be the leader in the wide receiver room. They knew Christian Watson's going to be rehabbing. He's not going to be back for a while. They're looking to Jayden Reed to be the leader of this group, and he is taking that assignment, so to speak, very, very seriously. And we've heard from multiple coaches about, Reed is right there with Matthew Golden, helping him out, showing him some things, answering questions, whatever the case might be. So as competitive as all this is, and as many questions as there are about exactly maybe what the pecking order is going to be come week 1 in September, this is a wide receiver room that has a lot going for it, has a lot of good vibes, and I think it's coming together the way Brian Gutekunst envisioned, which is that competition is never a bad thing, and they're going to find out who's gonna rise up here and perform.
It reminded me a lot of basically the same thing that Randall Cobb said after Jordy Nelson tore his ACL back in training camp, or the preseason more specifically, in 2015.
Yeah.
Now, certainly that was much later in the process. The Packers had to quickly adjust to not having Nelson, where I think the entire offseason has kind of been structured around, okay, well, at the very least, we're not going to have Christian Watson for the first part of the season, maybe not all of it. But that being said, I just feel like this is the natural step for Jayden Reed. He's been their leading receiver statistically the past 2 seasons.
Right.
I think you listen to what people said about him when he was at Michigan State, the type of guy he is, the way he leads. He is just a perfect Packers person, in addition to the fact that he's a really talented wideout as well. So I just feel like everybody understands the game in Green Bay. Tucker Kraft, did anything really change that much with the offense last year, that they were just going to continually feed Tucker Kraft? No. Luke Musgrave got hurt. Tucker Kraft got some opportunities. He made the most of those opportunities, and guess what happens when you make the most of opportunities? You're going to get more of them. Everybody understands that. That's how Romeo Doubs came in 2022 and made the impact that he did right off the bat as a 4th-round pick, as a rookie.
Yep.
That's why Jayden Reed was able to be effective right out of the bat. We'll see what they get in Matthew Golden. This is a young man that's coming in. He's a true junior this past year at Texas. He's going to have time to grow. Certainly Savion Williams is also a guy that is going to need some time to grow. They are still counting very much on this veteran nucleus that they've been developing for the past 2-3 seasons to come through for them, and ultimately that, I think, is where you're going to see the biggest jump. If you can get something from Golden and Williams right off the bat, fantastic. That is awesome for this offense. But the bottom line is Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, this group that's already been here, if the Packers are going to make a big jump offensively this season, it has to start with them. Yeah,
and seeing, as you mentioned, seeing where Christian Watson was at, I mean, he's, I believe, less than 5 months removed from ACL surgery, and it's like, you look at him kind of jogging around out there, you wouldn't think anything was ever wrong. I mean, so that's an extremely positive sign, and he's going to jump through every hoop necessary, what we know about Christian Watson, to get that medical clearance whenever that does come at some point later this fall. If I were to point to my biggest takeaway, and this comes from the fact that we talked to Jayden Reed and Kenny Clark and Edgerrin Cooper and Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney and Jordan Love. We talked to all of those guys after this one OTA practice that we got to watch. And when I kind of walked away from it and was processing it over the next couple of days after, the word hunger is what kept popping into my mind. And it's not to say that past teams in Green Bay haven't been hungry, that the desire and whatnot hasn't been there. But there is something about this bunch, and I think it's a combination of the fact that last season ended with 3 consecutive losses, including the first-round exit in the playoffs, so then you don't get as far as you did in the postseason a year ago. And quite frankly, that as opposed to taking the 49ers down to the wire the previous year and almost getting the NFC Championship game, they didn't really take the Philadelphia Eagles down to the wire. They played them into the fourth quarter, but everybody walked away that day knowing that the Eagles were the better team and deserved to move on. Having that be the third straight loss to end the season, combined with the fact of, I think, everything that has been swirling around out there in the various media narratives, whether it's about the wide receivers that we just discussed, or whether it's about did Jordan Love take a step back in 2024 compared to 2023? And we can talk more about that in a minute. But I think it's stirred something up in these guys that is a little bit different than what we felt at this time a year ago, when a lot of things, arrows are pointing up, all kinds of excitement and everything coming off of what was a somewhat surprising and unexpected playoff run at the end of 2023 and how well the team was playing. There's a hunger to these guys that that they know what's out there. They know that they didn't really live up to their own expectations collectively as a team a year ago, and I think that's really providing a motivating force for the group as a whole. That's just the sense I got after talking to all of these team leaders that we talked to on the first day.
Yeah, and it isn't even just about that, which certainly it is. I mean, this group wants to take another step. It's always interesting when you get the new guys into the mix. Like last year when Xavier, McKinney, and Josh Jacobs both came in, both of those guys talking about their need and their desire to win and how much that motivates them and how much it stung during their time at the Giants and their time with the Raiders to not have that type of success. Then you get somebody like Aaron Banks, the Packers' new left guard that they signed from San Francisco, and listening to him talk and just the kind of cerebral tone that he spoke with when discussing how he's been as close as you can get to winning a Super Bowl championship without actually having that ring on your finger.
Right.
And how much that drives him now, how much he's been pursuing that. And certainly there's money involved with it, and you want to take care of your family, and you have to take care of yourself. But he said when he was finding that next spot to sign, when he was looking at where it was going to be, he sees a place in Green Bay that has been close as well. Now, certainly there's only 5 players left from the last time the Packers got to an NFC championship game. But they know those stories, and they know what the standard has been here for so long. That is the chase. And last year, depending on which way you want to slice it, they had a first-round exit, which was 1 round earlier than the previous year when they got to the divisional round after they pulled off that upset of the Dallas. Last year, they didn't get back to the divisional round. But they also won 2 more games in the regular season. They also didn't perform as well in the NFC North. All these things kind of factor into this idea, I think, that has been sort of following Green Bay all offseason of this is what we've built toward this season. It's not that they're all in. It's not that it's everything about this year, but this is why you were the youngest team in the NFL the back-to-back years, to get you to this point. You want to win a Super Bowl every single year, but a lot of teams would struggle to even be competitive being as young as Green Bay was the past 2 seasons. The Packers not only did that, they made 2 postseason runs in Jordan Love's first 2 years as a starting quarterback. Everybody wants to talk about Aaron Rodgers was 27 years old when he won a Super Bowl. Brett Favre was 27 years old when he won a Super Bowl. You know what Aaron Rodgers didn't do? He didn't get to the playoffs the first 2 years as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Jordan Love did.
Yeah.
And you got to take your own pace and you got to follow your own path as it comes. But when you talk about hunger and desire and motivation, I think this roster, especially with the way that last season ended and losing to the eventual Super Bowl champion in the wild card round in Philadelphia, I think those are that's sort of that fuel that's firing into the engine right now, trying to get these guys going into 2025.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about Jordan Love in a minute, but on the playoff thing, I think one thing that could be really, really important for this Packers team moving forward, when you talk about the first 2 years, after 2 years as a starter, Aaron Rodgers had 1 playoff game under his belt. Jordan Love has 3. That, I think, can matter. If the Packers are in the position that they hope to be in, you can bank. Jordan Love can bank on that playoff experience, and even if he's not going to be the next Hall of Famer like Aaron Rodgers is, the next time Jordan Love gets to the playoffs, if he gets there again in year 3, he's in a better spot than Aaron Rodgers was in year 3, and I think that could pay dividends for this club. I'll take care of some sponsor business quick here, Wes. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone. Like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right. Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. We talked to both of those players after practice last week, and I'll let you go whatever direction you want to go with this, but I will just say this. Anybody who thought that Josh Jacobs was going to rest on his laurels with a 1,300-yard 15 touchdown season or whatever he ended up with, and that Xavier McKinney was going to rest on his first team All-Pro honors and just collect paychecks the rest of his time with that big contract in Green Bay. That is not how those two guys are wired. Yep. And they made that pretty clear, whether it's McKinney talking about, hey, his ultimate long-term goal, individually speaking, he wants to put on a gold jacket in Canton. Like he's going to be striving to be that type of player. And Josh Jacobs, for all of his success and how much he was the straw that stirred the drink of the Packers offense for quite a while, a good chunk of the season last year, the first thing he's talking about is he feels like he left a lot out there, that he didn't really maximize on everything he could have done, as much of a workhorse as he was. You can't have better guys than that in terms of their mentality, in terms of their approach, being the leaders in that locker room. When you're talking leaders aside from the quarterback, who's
right.
a natural leader in that position.
It's crazy, man, when you think about the fact that we covered Aaron Jones as long as we did, and Aaron moves on and goes to Minnesota in that same offseason, then we get Josh Jacobs. I mean, just how impressive these guys have been in terms of locker room character guys, in terms of obviously the type of performers they are. We're talking about Pro Bowl running backs here. But, I mean, they're just cut from the same cloth. And it was interesting, too. Jacobs is so articulate, and he's so thoughtful in how he answers things, much like McKinney, but I'm pulling off the number 8 thing over here.
Yeah.
But listen, he had such an in-depth, thoughtful answer, I felt. When people talk about, the receiver thing, he wanted a number 1 receiver, he wanted this and that. Josh Jacobs, so much of what he discusses is based on that sense of urgency, that he understands the position he plays. Yep. He understands tomorrow is never a given. And if he wants to win a championship, if he wants to take that next step and make a deep playoff run, he has to do it today. He can't, maybe you can do it tomorrow, maybe you can do it the day after that. But the only thing you can be sure of is right now, this moment. And I felt like the reason why no one took offense to it or whatever people wanted to blow it out to be was the fact that this is a guy that, one, talked at the end of last season about wanting to get more guys here, wanting to get, prove to players that you can come to Green Bay and win here and find a future here and make money here. I'd advertise it to free agents that way, advertise it to incoming draft picks that way. And certainly I think he's the guy carrying the flag right now for the Packers in terms of, we are going to do something special here, and he wants to be a part of it. And also that never undying chip on his shoulder that comes along with this. There's a lot of questions that were asked to him about, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and all this publicity a lot of these other backs have gotten. Maybe there hasn't been that type of narrative with Jacobs for everything he accomplished, and honestly, he doesn't care. The only thing that matters to him is, can he win a Super Bowl here? And what can he do, to your point, to maximize the opportunities he's been given? He said that comes down to breaking an extra tackle that might have taken a 20-yard gain into a 60-yard gain. That maybe is making a guy miss. And meanwhile, on the opposite side of the room, you had a guy like Aaron Banks who's blocked for Christian McCaffrey the last 4 years, talking about the offensive line's role in making Jacobs' job easier. The Packers have never been bigger on paper in this offensive line is what it could potentially be with this starting 5. You look at where Josh Jacobs is as a running back. This is a combination that Green Bay has not had during my time covering the team. They are a power running offense that has a pretty good quarterback behind it as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, Jacobs is 27 years old. The guy hopes to play another 8 years, I'm sure of it. But the fact is he knows you never are always in a position to be competitive and be aiming for championships. And he saw what that was like at the Raiders, when maybe you go into a season and you're not thinking you're going to win a Super Bowl. It would be a surprise if you make that type of run. That isn't the case in Green Bay.
Yeah, and you wrote a story about Jacobs, which is on the website, posted last week for those who want to check it out. And on Monday morning, a story that I wrote on Xavier McKinney and the defense. McKinney has all kinds of high hopes for this, what is essentially the year 2 for him in Green Bay, the year 2 for Jeff Hafley as defensive coordinator, the year 2 for Edgerrin Cooper as a potential centerpiece and playmaker in this defense. But when you actually listen to the things that Xavier McKinney talks about, and yes, he's got the high hopes and the high aspirations both individually and collectively, but in the same breath, he's also always talking about how much work it's going to take to get there. Like for him, he's like, hey, my job right now, we still got, a lot of young guys in the secondary. And, my job is to get them up to speed, make sure, everybody's still staying on the same page, that we can all, continue to make this progress together. Like he's taking that upon himself as a leader. And I had asked him specifically about Edgerrin Cooper, what he thought was ahead for Cooper in year 2. And one of the first things he says was, we collectively as a defense, the veterans on defense, have to keep pushing him because they can see what's potentially out there for Edgerrin Cooper. And as much as the coaches are going to do that pushing, the veteran players are going to push the guys where they see the talent. And that's the kind of work that Xavier McKinney wants to do for the group, as well as the work he feels he needs to put in individually in order to potentially earn another all-pro selection or whatever that might be. He talked about, his intensity can't change. He sees a guy, a free agent like Nate Hobbs, come in playing cornerback, in the same secondary. And the only thing we've heard from people about Nate Hobbs is really 2 words: intensity and energy, and what that guy brings to the practice field. And Xavier McKinney sees that, and he's like, I can't let somebody else on this team have more intensity and more energy than I do. I mean, so it's these veteran guys trying to push each other. And obviously it's the off season. We are a long, long way from week 1. But I think collectively the message that I felt, what I walked away from talking to all the team leaders is that these guys' minds are in the right place. They know that they can do something, but there is not a single one of them that takes anything for granted, let alone even just getting back to the playoffs again. They know they just slipped in as the 7 seed last year. They almost didn't make it, and so they know how precarious this can be over the long haul. To give yourself that opportunity at the end, they're taking it one step at a time. They're going to put in their work in the offseason. They're going to take their break. They're going to come back for training camp fired up and ready to go.
And this is where I've always come back to. Certainly it was great, the Packers' top 5 defense last year. First time they've done that in, 15 years?
Yeah.
Something around that. And the fact that, their run defense was as good as it's been in 15 years. But it was not just like, okay, well, they rolled the ball out there and that's what happened. No, they had a lot of playmakers. You had guys like Xavier McKinney that are making a difference, that are seen as the best at their position in the National Football League. Watching Nate Hobbs in practice, the one that we've watched at the time in which we're taping this, seeing him play the star position, that nickel position in the sub package. And he had multiple pass breakups on slants intended for Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. And you start to understand the method to the madness and why Green Bay goes and signs a player like that. Because one, it's a long season and you got to have guys who can play multiple positions. But you also see what the Packers saw on film with Hobbs. And obviously the emphasis there to feature, Keyshawn Nixon potentially as a boundary cornerback, a perimeter cornerback. That's another factor in this as we wait for, some resolution here with Jair Alexander's situation.
Yeah.
But more than anything, Mike, what my biggest takeaway was after we got done with all the availability, and the fact that Edgerrin Cooper was one of these star players that the Packers PR staff made available. This is a guy that has been in this uniform for barely a year.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was hearing Mike Smith, even though he was an outside linebackers coach here in Green Bay, but when he was talking about Rashawn Gary and how Gary, the way that he prepared, the way that he worked at it, this is a guy that just is not going to fail. And I get a very similar feel with Edgerrin Cooper. If he can stay healthy, this guy is legitimate. This guy is a problem for opposing offenses. And when you're talking about making that next step defensively, maybe the Packers can do better than a top 5 defense. But it also, can this be a unit that can be feared when it's on the field?
Yeah.
And I think with number 56 out there, it can be. And I don't know if there's been a guy in the defensive front since Clay Matthews' prime that has kind of given me that feel. Edgerrin Cooper gives me that type of motivation.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see where he goes from here.
I am too. I mean, the excitement is in that regard is kind of off the charts. I want to wrap up with one last thought because we started the show talking about a little bit about that leadership mandate that's been placed on Jaden Reed with regard to the receivers. There's a leadership mandate that's been placed on Jordan Love as well as the quarterback of this team, and obviously he's when you play quarterback and that's who you are, you're naturally a leader. But we heard at the end of last season, Matt LaFleur say he wants Jordan Love to be more vocal, to speak up more in meetings and on the practice field. He sets the example that every leader should set in terms of just his approach, his demeanor. As we've talked about many times, his steadiness and sort of unflappableness, for lack of a better word, is something I think that serves this team really well. That being said, Love is being pushed to be a little bit more vocal, to take charge in maybe some different ways. And from everything we heard from him, he's totally embracing that. He's not shying away and just saying, I'm just going to be, who I'm going to be. He's saying, yes, it needs to be genuine, and he needs to step forward a little bit. He's not going to fake it, but he is embracing the idea of kind of taking another step as a leader. And this team has a lot of leaders on it, but those who are not the leaders, I think this whole team is ready to follow.
Elton Jenkins presently is not here, right? That means that Jordan Love is the longest tenured player on the offensive side of the ball currently with the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay for OTAs.
That's something.
It's something. I mean, if you count the defensive side of the ball, with Jair not being here presently, he's the third longest tenured player on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
That counts for something. That has to count for something. This isn't a standard business where it's like, okay, well, you've been around for 6 years or 3 years as a starter. You're probably still getting your feet wet. You aren't necessarily in that manager. No, dude, this is NFL. It's like dog years. This guy's been here for like 42 years now. I mean, like that's the way this business runs, and he is the face of the franchise. And there was a reason why, like I did an Insider Inbox column where I led with him on doing that, because it was so funny to me. Everybody was kind of picking on his pitch at the Brewer game and everything like that on Memorial Day, but it's like, that's the franchise right there doing that. That's Jordan Love going around and doing these things, doing all this charity work this offseason. You're watching the maturation and evolution of a guy that this generation of Packers football is going to be based around. It's going to be centered on.
Right.
And having that voice in the locker room is important. And at the same time, as Jordan also warns, you don't want to be someone you're not. But you can still be yourself while also giving more your viewpoints and your opinions, not just on your position, not just on the offensive line, the entire operation. The Packers want that type of feedback. Matt LaFleur wants that type of feedback. He wants a guy that's going to rally those troops in the good, the bad, the in-between. Jordan Love can be that individual. And I think that's the exciting thing, because the way Jordan leads is with authenticity. He's very genuine in the way he acts and the way he handles people, the way he conducts himself on a daily basis. And just seeing him mature and just see him come more into his own skin now at going on 27, it just shows you, I mean, the Packers made the right call in 2020. It was a difficult call at the time, but they found their guy. Now, hopefully he can stay healthy and obviously, find improvements in some of his own areas of his game. But as far as a locker room leader, it's all right there for him. It's just kind of realizing that you're that really impressive dog, right? And it's just realizing what your bark can do. and I think Jordan's in that process right now.
I like that, and I'm going to call it a wrap on that comment right there. We will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. We have another open OTA access to practice this week. So on our next show in a couple of days, we will talk about what else we learn and what else we see. Keep you updated on everything going on here with the Packers. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.